Welcome to a journey through time as we uncover the epic story of a land of volcanoes, vibrant cultures, and enduring resilience. This is the complete history of Guatemala. Long before any European explorer set foot in the Americas, the land we now call Guatemala was the heartland of one of the world's most extraordinary civilizations, the Maya. For thousands of years, this remarkable people built magnificent cities, developed complex writing and mathematics, and charted the stars with breathtaking accuracy. Around 2000 BCE, small farming communities began to cultivate maize, beans, and squash, laying the groundwork for a future empire. Over centuries, these humble villages evolved into mighty city-states like Tikal, the sprawling El Mirador, Copan, and Quirigua, which reached their zenith during the Classic period, from 250 to 900 CE. The Maya created a society of incredible sophistication. They erected towering pyramids and sacred temples perfectly aligned with celestial events. They recorded their history in intricate hieroglyphs and devised one of the most precise calendar systems ever known. Their city-states were often locked in fierce competition, waging wars and forging shifting alliances for regional dominance. Religion was the bedrock of their existence. Rulers were seen as divine intermediaries between the heavens and the earth, and elaborate rituals, including offerings and sacrifices, were performed to maintain the delicate balance of the cosmos. But then, around the 9th century, something strange happened. Many of the great Maya cities in the southern lowlands mysteriously began to decline. Scholars today point to a perfect storm of factors: severe drought, relentless warfare, and the depletion of natural resources. Yet, it's crucial to understand that the Maya people did not simply vanish. Their descendants continued to thrive in the highlands and smaller towns, preserving their languages and ancient traditions long after the great stone cities were reclaimed by the jungle. A new chapter began in 1524, when Spanish conquistadors, led by the ruthless Pedro de Alvarado, a lieutenant of Hernán Cortés, invaded the region. The conquest was swift and brutal. Armed with steel, horses, and gunpowder, and by exploiting rivalries between the local kingdoms, the Spanish defeated the powerful Quiche and Kaqchikel nations. Within a few short years, the entire territory was brought under Spanish colonial rule, marking the definitive end of independent Maya sovereignty. Guatemala was incorporated into the Captaincy General of Guatemala, a vast administrative region under the authority of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, which was governed from Mexico City. The Spanish established their colonial capital at Santiago de los Caballeros de Guatemala, known today as Antigua Guatemala. It quickly grew into one of the most splendid and important cities in all of Central America. The Catholic Church played a central role in the new order, establishing missions to convert the indigenous population. This was often done through the encomienda system, a brutal form of forced labor where indigenous people were compelled to work for Spanish landlords in exchange for supposed protection and Christian instruction. For nearly 3 centuries, the colonial economy was built on the backs of indigenous labor, primarily in agriculture and mining. Valuable crops like cacao, indigo, and cochineal dye were harvested and exported back to Spain, enriching the crown and colonial elites. Meanwhile, local communities were crushed under the weight of oppressive taxes and a rigid social hierarchy. At the top were the Peninsulares, those born in Spain. Below them were the Creoles, people of Spanish descent born in the Americas. At the very bottom were the indigenous and mixed-race populations, who faced systematic exploitation and discrimination. In 1773, a catastrophic earthquake reduced much of the beautiful capital, Antigua Guatemala, to rubble. This disaster forced the colonial authorities to relocate the capital to its present-day location, Guatemala City. As the new city rose, so did new ideas. The winds of revolution blowing from Europe and North America began to reach Central America. Inspired by independence movements across the hemisphere, Guatemalans started to question and challenge 3 centuries of Spanish domination. The moment came in 1821. Following Mexico's successful War of Independence from Spain, Guatemala declared its own independence on September 15, 1821. But freedom did not bring immediate stability. The nation initially joined the short-lived Mexican Empire under Agustín de Iturbide. When that empire collapsed in 1823, Guatemala joined the United Provinces of Central America, a fragile federation that included its neighbors Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. But this union, plagued by internal conflicts and regional rivalries, also dissolved. By 1839, Guatemala finally emerged as a fully independent republic. The rest of the 19th century was defined by a bitter power struggle between two opposing factions, the liberals and the conservatives. They held competing visions for the nation's soul. Conservatives championed traditional structures, a strong central government, and the authority of the Catholic Church. Liberals, in contrast, pushed for modernization, secularization, and free trade. Under influential liberal leaders like Justo Rufino Barrios, who ruled from 1873 to 1885, Guatemala underwent radical reforms. Church lands were confiscated, education was secularized, and coffee was aggressively promoted, soon becoming the country's dominant export. While these reforms modernized the economy, they often came at a great cost, benefiting a small group of wealthy landowners while dispossessing indigenous peasants of their communal lands and deepening the chasms of inequality. As the 20th century dawned, a new power began to exert its influence: foreign corporations. The United Fruit Company, or UFCO, an American corporation, grew to have immense control over Guatemala. It owned vast tracts of land for banana cultivation, controlled the country's only major port, and even owned the railway system. This overwhelming economic dominance earned Guatemala the infamous nickname Banana Republic. Political instability remained a constant, with a series of dictators and military coups often supported by powerful foreign business interests. One of the most pivotal moments in modern Guatemalan history arrived in 1944. A popular uprising, now known as the October Revolution, overthrew the long-reigning dictator Jorge Ubico. This event ushered in a remarkable decade of democratic reform, a period often called the 10 Years of Spring. The new democratically elected presidents, Juan José Arevalo and his successor Jacobo Arbenz, introduced progressive policies aimed at improving education, strengthening labor rights, and, most controversially, redistributing land. In 1952, Arbenz enacted an ambitious agrarian reform program. Its goal was to expropriate large, unused agricultural estates, including vast holdings owned by the United Fruit Company, and give them to landless peasant farmers. This bold move set off alarm bells in the United States, which was then in the grips of Cold War paranoia. Viewing Arbenz's reforms as a step toward communism, the CIA orchestrated a coup in 1954. Codenamed Operation PB Success, the coup successfully overthrew the democratically elected government of Jacobo Arbenz, accusing him of being a Soviet sympathizer. His downfall brought an abrupt and tragic end to Guatemala's democratic experiment and plunged the country into decades of repressive military rule. What followed was one of the darkest periods in Guatemalan history. From the 1960s until the 1990s, the nation was torn apart by a brutal civil war. The conflict pitted a succession of right-wing military governments against various leftist guerrilla groups. Fueled by deep-seated social inequality and the broader ideological battle of the Cold War, it became one of Latin America's longest and bloodiest internal conflicts. The military's counterinsurgency campaigns were horrific. They targeted not only armed rebels, but also entire indigenous communities suspected of supporting them. Massacres, forced disappearances, and systematic human rights abuses became terrifyingly common. A UN-backed Truth Commission later concluded that an estimated 200,000 people were killed or disappeared during the war, the vast majority of them unarmed Maya civilians. Finally, after more than 36 years of unimaginable violence, a path to peace emerged. In 1996, the Guatemalan government and the guerrilla forces signed a series of peace accords, officially ending the civil war. These accords were ambitious, promising sweeping social reforms, justice for the countless victims, and, importantly, greater recognition of the rights of Guatemala's indigenous peoples. While the signing of the peace accords brought an end to the fighting and ushered in a new era of stability, the country's deep-rooted problems of inequality, poverty, and corruption did not disappear overnight. In the 21st century, Guatemala continues to wrestle with significant challenges. Systemic poverty, political corruption, the power of organized crime, and immense pressure from migration remain defining issues. And yet, this is a nation of extraordinary richness, in its culture, its resilience, and its breathtaking natural beauty. Indigenous peoples, the direct descendants of the Maya, still make up nearly half of the population. They have tenaciously preserved their unique languages, their stunning textiles, and their ancient traditions against all odds. The majestic ruins of Tikal, rising from the jungle canopy, and the cobblestone streets of Antigua stand as powerful testaments to the country's vibrant, multi-layered history and its enduring spirit. Modern Guatemala is a land of vivid contrasts, a place where ancient and modern coexist, where the scars of struggle are met with the power of hope, and where timeless tradition meets constant transformation. From the astronomical genius of the Maya to the painful trials of colonialism, revolution, and civil war, Guatemala's story is ultimately one of profound endurance and the unyielding search for identity. It is a nation that continues to rebuild and reimagine itself, forever proud of its past, always hopeful for its future, and eternally shaped by the unbreakable spirit of its people. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible historical journey. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, please give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. We'll see you next time.